with Connor, and I am excited to sit down and talk with my first Canadian guest on the Eisner's podcast. Founder of CannaCollective's, Danyka Dunseith, transitioning from a life in public relations to hemp farming was no easy task. Driven by a desire to learn, she knew the importance of sustainable farming and the benefits of hemp. She founded CannaCollective and has flown all over the world as a speaker, educator, and more. I can't wait to talk to her about the farming industry, her projects all around the globe, and the impact hemp can have in the world and on kids. Don't forget to sit down with the Eisner's podcast with Connor Sunday, March 17th, as we go live at 5. And remember to give someone lots of hugs and love today. Hey guys, this is Connor from the Eisner's podcast, and I am very excited to be sitting down and talking with Danyka Dunseith. Hey Danyka, how's your day going?
Hi Connor, my day's going really well. How's your day going?
Good.
Nice. You seem really busy. I'm very excited to see what your podcast is up to.
I am. I heard some stuff about hemp. Now, what does hemp do?
Whoa, that's a loaded question, sir. Um, there's a plethora of benefits to hemp, and what's really interesting is it's not specifically for one thing. We have industrial purposes, we have medical purposes, and what's amazing is that it lends into so many different industries that we can use it across the board.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I've learned like 2 things about hemp from my dad, actually.
Tell me more.
So basically I learned that you can make houses out of hemp. And most importantly, hemp can save lives.
Oh my gosh, your dad is not right. It is really amazing that hemp can build houses. So in lieu of concrete, we're now starting to use hempcrete instead of, because it is better insulator, it's sustainable, it is flame retardant, and it is moisture controlled. What we are finding, and I know that we touched on this earlier, is that one of the issues within that is the infrastructure. Like I said, we're not reinventing something, but we're definitely coming back to the board, and within hemp as an industrial purpose, we're expanding on that. So in terms of expense, it is still a little bit more expensive than the typical build.
That is actually really cool. Now, what attached you to start hemp?
Oh, fun question. My background was it was corporate. It was public relations and communications. I got a job at a startup company as director of marketing, and they specialize in CBD. So CBD is the non-psycho derivative that comes from the hemp plant as well, which is the cannabis plant too. And I started learning a lot more about that. It started as a job for me, and I became extremely passionate about it. I started learning specifically about CBD and what that was doing for patients who were not looking for antidepressants or things that were psychoactive, that were altering their mind. So when I learned about what CBD could do, and then I learned more about hemp, and I thought, well, I have a 100-acre farm that I'm not currently growing hemp on. So I was told to do 1 acre to test with, and I did 50 acres because I thought, what's the difference? 1 acre is 50 acres. And actually yielded 93,000 kilos of biomass the first year. So we saw a really, really incredible, at that point too, we had just legalized. So we did see that there was traction gaining, and that was it made me very hopeful for the industry.
Mm-hmm. So tell me more about public relations, the ups and downs, because I'm only an 11-year-old kid, so I wouldn't know. And did your family and friends support it?
Support the public relations or support the hemp growing?
The hemp growing.
Hemp growing, a lot of people were skeptical, but amazingly enough, my Nana, hi Nana, I love you, was the first person to get on board after, because at first she was confused, because when you think about hemp, a lot of people do misconstrue that with THC. It's absolutely not the case. While it falls under the umbrella of cannabis, that is not the case at all. So when I explained it to my Nana and explained what the benefits were and what the plan was overall for my company that I was building, my Nana was the first one to get very much on board, and she'll be the first to share anything relevant or educational. So that was a really cool generational gap that we were able to kind of navigate through. And then your first question, public relations. It What I also love about public relations is it goes across any industry. And I do find that it's still transferable right now to the industry that we're growing within hemp.
That is really cool.
Thank you.
Now, what is biomass?
Biomass, so that's the byproducts that you're going to get when you're cropping it. So let's say you're growing hemp and you're growing for either grain, fiber, or specifically the biomass. And what we do love, and this is actually a fun fact, because I was concerned initially when we were growing for, let's say, even CBD. So then you're growing a different genetic, but then you have to go to the board and you have to look at what's approved by Health Canada. So we can circle back to that. Otherwise, you want all of that biomass, and it can be used for compost, and then that's what can be used to be broken down and used for hempcrete.
That's cool. Now is hemp the same as cannabis?
So the best way that I can explain that, we have cannabis as an umbrella. So much like, grapefruit and oranges, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They're both under the citrus family, correct? So you have that with cannabis, and you have THC on one side, and then you have hemp on the other side. Both have similar attributes, but it's completely dependent on how it's grown and the climate and what you're growing it for.
Now you told me it took a year to grow about 90,000. How hard is it to grow?
It wasn't a year. So with the genetic that I started with, it was a 120-day cycle. It's the genetic is called Judah. So it's actually, and if I'm being honest, I'm jealous of my friends in the tropical areas because they're able to get more than one crop per season just because of the climate. Whereas here in Canada, we really have to capitalize on our season. So it's about, oh gosh, by the way, planning never stops with farming, just so everybody knows. We are always busy. But about May, June, you need them in the ground, and then you're looking at harvest around September, October. But like anything with farming, we are super dependent on weather, Mother Nature.
That's cool. So what are some projects you do globally?
So globally right now, we're working on setting up some irrigation in South Africa, where we're actually going to be implementing hempcrete small tiny homes. Within that, we work with an incredible company who is actually finding a way to take the hemp biomass fuel and create that into a battery. So we're hoping to be able to have a small ecosystem that's hempcrete based and hemp biofuel based.
So what inspired you to start hemp?
I think, like I said, noticing kind of the demand for that. And then once initially it was CBD, and the problem with that is it became such a saturated market, and there were a lot of snake oil salesmen. And I'll touch on kind of the thesis of your show about, anti-bullying. With that, I think it became a rat race, and everybody thought they were on the precipice of something, and it became a really cutthroat industry for something that's not what the purpose should be. So rather than focusing, and it also became unregulated, which is a problem. If you're giving somebody medicine, you need to know what's in it. So I shifted my focus more to the root of it, because I said, okay, if all of these things can come from something and I can grow it, why wouldn't I grow it myself?
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned hempcrete. What's the applications of hempcrete, and why should people be aware of hempcrete?
Well, circling back to, they should be aware of it because it's very, very cool. The first time I fell in love with it it was a demonstration at a conference that I was speaking at. And I didn't know too much about that because construction is definitely not my background. But I saw this gentleman doing, I think it was 45 minutes that he was speaking. The entire time he had a hempcrete block that he had created himself, and he had a blowtorch going at it. By the end of the presentation, there was like a tiny mark, the tiniest of mark. So that fascinated me further. And then when we look at things that are happening, for instance, California, the wildfires that were happening, those homes are going, and it's very sad how quickly they're going up in flames. Whereas if we had used hempcrete as a building block, it would still be damaged. I think people misconstrue that too. They think, oh, hemp's going to save the world. It is if we all do our part and we all implement it in a way that it should. But it's baby steps. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be parts of the home that isn't damaged, but it would not necessarily fall the way that it did. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So what different laws are in Canada than America?
Well, the first thing is we're federally legislated. So we use a program, it's called CTLS. So that's for anybody who's growing anything under the cannabis umbrella, they have to report to the government, which I know is very similar, but with the US, you guys are state to state. So each of your states in the US, you guys different regulations. We're across the board.
Mm-hmm. So wait, how old were you when you started hemp?
Oh my gosh, you're never supposed to ask a lady that question.
I'm sorry.
I was 24 when I started learning more about CBD, and I was 25 when I incorporated my company. And then 26 was when I really, really dug my teeth into learning more about hemp. And my piece of advice for that too is anybody you meet, ask questions, because if there's a question you're asking, chances are somebody else is asking it as well. And even like furthermore, chances are somebody has that answer. So it was very, very cool to meet veterans in the industry that were super excited about having, younger people come on and learn about this. On the upside, you also get people that aren't so excited.
So do you think kids should be more introduced to hemp?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Absolutely. I'll give you an example. My nephew and nieces, it used to be the fun Toronto thing that they would come and spend, March break or whatever it was, spring break. And when I moved to the farm, I was super nervous that they weren't going to find it as fun or interesting. And when I was explaining what I did, because they were looking through a soil analysis book that I had out in my office. And, they asked, well, what is this? And I explained it, and I was like, oh, this must be so boring for you. They went home, and then my best friend, their mom, they made their own folder. They started their own little pots of just like flowers and stuff, but they wanted to mark the soil analysis. So I thought that was really, really amazing to spark that interest.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what are some ups and downs in your career?
Oh my goodness. Like any career, and especially owning your own company, you have to definitely be patient. And I struggle with that. I'm not the most patient person in the world. More so like it's when you're building something like this, it's your baby and you're obviously very proud of it, and it takes up a lot of time. So you want things to move at the same pace that your brain does sometimes, but that's not always the case. But the ups are making your own hours is absolutely amazing. Working with different like-minded individuals who are in different industries but still bring the same vision to the table. I think that camaraderie is very, very cool. And then to be honest, Connor, I can't even say that they're hard downs because it's just the spirit of the business, right? It's the ebb and flow. So when it's down, I try to look at that more so as a learning opportunity. Like, why does this stress me out? What can I do to mitigate this? And how can we, essentially eradicate it to not happen? But it will still happen with any career, any business. You just take the good with the bad.
How hard is it to harvest the hemp? And when do you know it is time?
Oh, sweet hemp babies. Um, Initially it was really difficult to find somebody to even give me the time of day to harvest hemp because it is very fibrous. So when you look at that stalk, it's incredibly fibrous. And I heard that, I guess, in the 70s, somebody tried to harvest in our area and it got stuck in the combine and it ruined $500,000 piece of machinery. So when I was young and I was naive, I did not know this. And I said, "Oh, can I borrow your combine?" Like asking for a cup of sugar. No, turns out that is not the same as asking for a cup of sugar. So once I did my research and understood the proper settings and where we wanted to cut it and had the proper buyers and what they wanted from the crop, then it was easier to find the equipment. And I also got very lucky that I work with another local custom farmer who understands hemp. So it's very important to have somebody who's on the same page because otherwise they're not quite sure. When you switch from corn and soy, typically it is a different ball game, but it's not impossible.
Can hemp be used as food?
Yes, oh my goodness, hemp is a superfood. That's why we call it the tri-crop because we love, and that's the biomass would typically be the shake off of that. So we want the stalk, we want the grain, and then we definitely want anything else to be able to push down, whether it be oil or whether it be made for hempcrete.
We were talking about regeneration farming and the impact hemp has. Can you tell me more about that? And what impact does hemp have on the soil?
Amazing. Sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
We were talking about regenerative farming and the impact hemp has on soil.
So what we love about that, if we so for my farm specifically, we got lucky because it had already been farmed. But if you go into a space, we're actually working on a project here in Ontario that I can't say too much about, unfortunately, but that's mainly what it was about. Their soil was in no condition to do anything. So we went in, and the whole point of that was to plant hemp for a few seasons. What that does, so it's soil rejuvenation and it gives back to anything that it needs, that it's being depleted of. And in addition to that, it's also doing phytoremediation, which means that it's taking all of the toxins and it's kind of doing a cycle effect, which we love. And then we get into carbon capture. So what we love about carbon capture that's really interesting with hemp, it obviously depends on the acreage and the climate, but there's a certain amount. And so a lot of people are still doing studies. I'm personally still learning about this because I find it fascinating, but that's the other way. So when essentially what it is what's in the air, like any plant, it's coming into and it's doing it's cycling. But hemp is there to essentially remove all of the toxins. It's a poor example, but for people who don't understand when I'm talking about that, I talk about like face masks, like for women who are asking. And I'm like, if you do a face mask and you take it off, like you see what's on there. A little bit similar to that, obviously a lot more goes into it. And with that as well, like that's kind of a Cliff Notes version of what it does. But what you do first and foremost need to know is what is already in your soil.
Yes.
So if you go in and you grow, like let's say you're growing an acre, which I implore you to do so, you would be amazing at hemp farming, Connor. But if you go in and you throw whatever genetic you have your hands on, it will do well because it's hemp, it grows like a weed, and that's why we love it. But you will have such a better chance of success if you go in, you learn your soil, you understand, your phosphorus level, your magnesium levels, what you're up to on that. Then go cross-reference what genetics are best for that, what will grow best. Are you looking for grain? Are you looking for fiber? Are you just looking to clean up an area?
Mhm.
So equip yourself with all that good information first.
Can you tell me more about carbon capture?
Carbon capture, yes. So I'll give you an example right now where I don't know if you can see my board behind me, but we're looking at, so it's funny because I am actually not, I wasn't obsessed with math until now. So with carbon capture, you're looking at TC equals TDW. Full disclosure, still learning what that means. What we do know though is what's going into the air can actually be emitted and stored. What I will say, and honestly, anybody listening to this podcast, I would love for you to reach out and collaborate with me on storage. We know what carbon capture is. Right now, what I am really wanting to focus more on is the storage of it and how we can regenerate that back into it. So I'm
Yes.
still working on that. Anybody else who knows?
So you said genetics. Are they different?
Yeah, we have several. So it's the same way how you plant different flowers or different vegetables. There's several different genetics when it comes to any strain of cannabis.
Yeah, that is really cool. Um, were you ever bullied as a kid?
Yes. Honestly, I think we all were in some capacity. And if I'm being very honest, if somebody said that they weren't, maybe they were super confident and didn't notice. But I think everybody goes through that. And I think, by the way, I love that you're touching on this on your podcast. I think that's very, very brave and very forward thinking of you. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Um, is it hard being a, have you ever gotten like bullied being a woman in this industry?
Um, I don't, okay, that's again, it's funny because as you become an adult, it's different. It's not playground, you get pushed on the ground where you that's indicative of bullying. It becomes a little bit more interesting. So I think it still falls under the category. When I first took over the farm, and that was initially just to make sure that things were running smoothly, I had full grown men walking into the house thinking that it was an open house because they assumed that I was a real estate agent. And it's actually like a funny story. But at the time, it was so foreign to me. And I was like, even if I were the real estate agent, why would you walk into the home? It's interesting. But it was more the assumption of like, well, obviously you're not the farmer. Obviously you're not doing this. And then at conferences, many times it would typically just be, oh, get your boss to call me. And I'd say, okay, no problem. And then when I emailed them and they saw that I was the CEO and it was my name, they would apologize. And I said, no, it's fine. We all make assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different form of that. It's more like belittling in a sense, but
Yeah, that's sad.
you know what? It's not though, because to me, I laugh at that. I think it's embarrassing for them because when you make an assumption, then sometimes like you may have missed out on a client or a really good potentially relationship. You don't know kind of thing. So I think judgment is kind of your own worst nightmare in any industry or in any situation.
How'd you get through all the bullying? And what point did you have for kids like me?
Um, Getting through the bullying. Okay, that's a set a goal. And on it, regardless of the goal, it does not matter what it is. Set a goal, and each if you are getting bullied or if that's the case, just keep thinking about your goal and think about how you'll never do that to somebody. Because when people treat me or my company or something like that, I take that as fuel and I take that as a card to not ever make somebody feel like that or to continue that behavior. And then for your question, can you elaborate on that? What do you mean, quite like for kids like you, just in general for kids or kids like you? Because I already know you and I know how special you are.
General.
General, I would stick with the same. Set a goal, know what you're up to, and honest, don't let anybody dim your light. It sounds cliche, but the amount of times that I've been told not to grow hemp or not to do what I'm doing, and the same people have come back and said, oh, like, how did you do that? And again, and I love your message too with your podcast. Just be kind.
How about adults who want to start a business? Do you have any pointers for adults that want to start a business?
For adults, I would say the same. I, trust me, adults can still be bullies, unfortunately. I would say the same, set goals, all of that good stuff. But to also for adults, if you're in a position where you're lucky enough to do a podcast or be able to speak to youth and share your story, I would say please, be consistent and be kind and be willing to share that. Because I've had a lot of adults that I've seen in the industry where kids are interested and they don't have the time and they say, oh, you'll know one day. Well, what's to say today is not the day? If you're asking the question, then I think everybody should, deserve even a moment to take that and acknowledge and share the information. So for adults, I would say if kids are interested, especially in agriculture and especially in hemp, as I said, it's so multi-purposeful. Take the time, sit down. I mean, it may take 30 seconds, it may take 30 minutes, but it may make a massive difference.
Yes. Do you find people that they don't take you seriously?
Um, I think it depends. It depends on the situation because I've had veteran farmers who aren't just not understanding. So it's not a matter of, bullying or being mean or being rude or a lack of taking seriously. It's more of just a lack of understanding.
And I said that because you mentioned people thinking you're the realtor, so I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, well, that was years ago. Now they know I'm not the realtor.
Yeah, definitely. So, what is your favorite memory of an event, meeting someone, etc.?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. There have been so many incredible people that I've had the honor of meeting from around the world that have come together. For instance, Kathmandu. I would definitely say that Kathmandu, Nepal, that was incredible because it was 45 people from around the world. So it was a small but intimate group that all had such a like-minded vision. And we all kind of traveled 2 days to get there. So we all had a lot of skin in the game. It was a really incredible group of people.
So back to mentioning you being around the world. You have been around the world. How does the world view hemp and cannabis?
I love that question. So the conferences that I attended, obviously they were trying to be forward thinking and it was more of kind of a think tank to see what type of traction they'd be able to get. And then there were places, Bali, when I was in Indonesia, I was lucky enough to sit down with a government official, but it was not even remotely near the time that they would acknowledge hemp. Whereas in Indonesia, it grows feral in spots, but it's illegal to acknowledge it. You have dogs, it's an epidemic of the dog situation and no food for dogs. And that's, you asked about food for hemp, you can absolutely use that for animals as well. So I was confused if it's growing feral, why aren't we using that? And then that's what I'm speaking about, the infrastructure. And that was hard for me to swallow. So it varied kind of from spot to spot. When I was in England, they're extremely open to it, but they don't have the terrain or the farm space to be able to do the volume that we need. So it varies from spot to spot. And I don't know that we'll see it unilateral, but we're going to try.
So back to hemp. What's if you do know, what's the population of hemp and how did hemp even start?
What do you mean, what's the population?
Like how many people support hemp?
That I don't know that I can answer that. I would be speculating. That's a really
hard one.
That's a hard one, yeah. Good question.
I'm sorry for putting you on the spot there.
No, it's a good question, but I mean, are we talking per capita? Are we talking per country? Because
like the entire world.
I love that you inspired me because after we get off this interview, I'm going to look this up and send you a comprehensive thing that I find because now I need to know.
So my dad says that some countries you could actually go to jail for death or life. Is that true?
For hemp, no.
Or for cannabis?
For cannabis, yes. For cannabis, yes, but it's well, to your dad's point, it's you're not allowed, like I said in Bali, you're not allowed to acknowledge it if it's illegal in the country. So, but like anything, if they in those countries, if they tell you do not do that, do not do that. Whereas cannabis, THC, very, very illegal in many countries,
Mm-hmm.
which kids shouldn't be touching anyways.
Yeah. So wait, what was hemp used for before
Uh,
prohibition, and why was it into prohibition or prohibition?
So initially, hemp was used for textiles, and it was primarily rope, paper was a huge thing. There, oh my gosh, I could talk about this for literal hours, but
Do it.
I love you, but I do not have literal hours. It was used for textiles, paper, clothing, obviously. And with prohibition, what happened was THC, they lumped it under cannabis, which is why so many people are confused about the difference. And the paper company came in and decided hemp was too sturdy and there was no need for giant paper, lumber, timber companies. And they had that put under the Prohibition Act. And so it wasn't until 2018 that we actually had that put under an option with CTLS.
That's cool. So was it a huge industry?
It was a massive industry. It was much like our fur trade, much like our timber trade, even still. It was quite a massive industry.
That is really cool. Wasn't it a big ad adricor item?
Sorry.
A big ad a wasn't it a big farming item?
It was. And that, well, you have to remember too, when we're talking about the origin of hemp, we didn't have these massive, massive corporations at the time. The majority of what our industry stemmed from was based on everything agriculture, whether it was hunting, obviously farming. Yeah. So it was a massive part of it.
Why do you think people think so badly about hemp?
I don't think people, okay, especially now, they've definitely changed the narrative because when I first started out, it was the same question of, well, what's the difference between, hemp and marijuana? I say THC because I hope that people understand the difference. So it was more of like a confusion. And then you saw Whole Foods, you saw different commercials, acai bowls. They're all like implementing hemp hearts and hemp grain. So it became kind of a yoga movement. I noticed a lot of my friends that were obsessed with yoga were like, oh, like now I love hemp. So it kind of actually made its debut, I think, more so with food. When I started trying to learn about hempcrete, a lot of people knew ish about it, but didn't quite know, like to your point, the applications or why that's relevant or why we care. And then I started following more and more. And I was actually lucky enough to go out to Alberta in Canada, which is very, very cold. And met with the best gentleman. He's amazing. He has a workshop and he's going around and educated. And he has tiny homes built already on his farm to show proof of concept. So, and they're beautiful too. Like they are very, very, very well done. So it became less of what people didn't know and see, and it became more readily available. And I've said this for a few years now. And my initial hypothesis was once our consumer demand shifts, for instance, like exactly to your point, why do people think it's bad or why is there a taboo? Once we had that consumer demand shift, that's when companies would spend more money on the research. They would spend more money doing this. And I knew that we were on the precipice of something But as people became more educated, more interested, and then corporations started getting in it, like you can go to Costco now and you see hemp herds on the thing. Some of these companies I've not even heard about, but they're clearly capitalizing on the fact that people now understand the benefits and want this as a superfood. And that's just one of the aspects. We're not even getting into the.
Mhm. They say hemp can power a car. Can you tell me how that works?
You would likely have to ask my good friend Henry Ford.
Oh,
That actually, I joke, but that it was one of Henry Ford was the first one to actually use hemp biofuel. So when you talk about biomass, that's by like I don't even love the word biomass because I don't consider that something to get rid of. You can use all of that and then break it down into an oil.
you
Yeah,
said Henry Ford.
I did.
How long ago was that?
I feel like I'm on Jeopardy. I should have written these. I have it readily available. Let me pull it up for you. Next time I'm gonna get you to give me speaking notes. No, these are really good questions and I love them. It was definitely before your time. And that. So sadly, it did not go into full production. And it was, hold on, it's funny that you're fact checking me on the podcast. It's not even my fact, but oh, there we go. 1942.
That's cool.
Now we know. Together we're learning. I love this.
Together. Why do you think the automotive industry did not use hemp fuel?
I think it's another example of the paper industry pushing them out. It just became the fact that it was so sustainable. And think about it from a company perspective. If you, let's say you're selling sweatshirts, and I want to buy a sweatshirt from you, but there's another company that sells sweatshirts, but I'll only have to buy one sweatshirt ever. But I have to come back to and I have to buy it a couple every 6 months or whatever, you know what I mean? Once wear and tear. But this other company, I don't have to go and buy another sweatshirt ever. Which company would you go with?
Never.
There you go. So wouldn't it be easier to push the little guy out and then have somebody who has to come back every 6 months and make money?
Yeah.
Sad way of thinking, but that is the way that it works.
Yeah. And can we make it work and use it today as fuel?
Oh gosh, yeah. That's what we're doing with the batteries.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
And
So batteries.
that
Um,
I can't touch too much on. I work with a really amazing company. They're based out of Australia. And they've been working on that for quite some time. And they've managed to get it to a small scale. So still working on that. But it is definitely, it's amazing what kind of, like I said, which each sector is coming up to kind of rebuild this.
a plant to a battery. So wait, so you're telling me that I can power my phone with hemp?
Eventually, yeah. Connor, I'll do you one better. Eventually, you're going to be able to power your house with hemp fuel.
Actually,
Truly.
that's cool.
It's a really amazing thing. And again, circling back to your point, I love that youth is getting involved in this because it is going to make a huge difference. And it is absolutely the way of the future.
Definitely. I totally agree with you. Well, we need to know
What do we need to know?
when um okay. We need to know more about hemp as kids.
I agree. I love that you said that because I was actually speaking with a colleague of mine. She has kids about your age as well that are super interested in all that good stuff. And we thought about doing a workshop. And what I would like to see is have a small piece on the land I want each person to choose their own genetic with a reason. If you say, oh, okay, I've done my research in this genetic, grow it, check on it, harvest it, and we can do hand roguing at that point because an acre is easy enough to do, and learn all about that. And some may find I don't love farming, it's not for me, but I would say 99% will be really interested. And there's something really amazing about having that seed in that plant and seeing it grow and then seeing it come to fruition and what it can do.
Mm-hmm.
I love that idea. We should, Connor, actually, do you want to help me get a workshop together?
Yeah, definitely.
I
That'd be
love
like
it.
really cool. So then, yeah. And we should also get a program together so then we can start having kids learn about hemp all around the world.
I love that idea.
I was worried this week about people giving me flack for being interested in talking about hemp and farming.
Really?
Yeah.
Did
I
anybody?
was like, Dad, I'm so worried.
Oh my gosh, did anybody say anything?
I don't know. I mean, probably not.
I don't think so. And if they're probably just jealous that you love
Yeah.
really cool stuff.
Yeah. Now, one question. Is hemp smokable? Does it get you high?
No,
Okay, good.
no. Hemp is non-psychoactive. And I love that you asked that question because I think and for adults, I think that's something that they don't understand as well. Hemp, actually, I think I told your dad this story when he first interviewed me years ago, when I had these kids out in my fields and they were sitting and they were being teenagers and not the best of guess, but they were pulling the plants, and Bolly and my dog and I were looking, and he like I was like, what are you doing? And they're pulling the plants, and then I see them trying to, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, you guys are going to be so disappointed. That is not what you think it is. It is not psychoactive. It is not at all what you're trying to do. So I'm still really trying to educate people, and I can understand where they get confused, but no, you cannot smoke hemp. You will not get high from hemp. You can use it as a lighter, as the hemp wick. Like there are so many other things to use hemp for. It's not meant for that.
Rope?
Absolutely. And do you know why they use it for rope when they were coming over from Europe on boats? Fun fact, it doesn't decay from the salt water.
It doesn't?
No, sir.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wait, is hemp flammable? Like, that's just like a question.
Um, it is.
Okay, because it's like hemp could be flammable, but I don't know why it would be, but I don't know why it wouldn't be. So,
Well, it's an interesting thing. I mean, any plant is flammable if you set it to fire. But
yeah.
you can definitely still set it on fire. But what's interesting is when you break it down, and that's when you do the education, get the fibers, and then you're making hempcrete. That is an interesting question because that is flame retardant, whereas the plant itself, yeah, you essentially could light it on fire, but
Mhm.
don't.
Can hemp be used for clothing too? Like pants, socks, shirts?
Yeah, I actually have a really amazing hemp shirt that I love, and there's a company. It's called 8,000 Kicks. They make water resistant hemp shoes.
Speaking of hemp shoes, my dad has hemp shoes.
Ooh, tell them I'm borrowing them.
She's borrowing them.
We're the same size, right?
I I don't know. Probably not. Um, so have you like met anyone that you still talk to this day um and like farm and grow with that you've met from doing hemp?
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's cool.
There's so many content and globally too, and that's what I love about that. And I got very lucky in that I traveled for the 2 years before the pandemic. So there was a lot of people, and then I guess everybody got stuck with me because there was nowhere to go. You had to answer my phone calls. But no, it was a really good way of meeting people and kind of getting Canada on the map and we were on the map as a farm country, but we were the second rather country to legalize federally. So there was lots of work to be done, but I still keep in touch with quite a few people that and it's really incredible because if you're going to do another project or you want to have something learn about, hey, what's going on with your soil, it's very interesting to be able to pick up the phone
Yeah.
and call South Africa and say, hey, what are you guys up to genetic wise?
Yeah. Hemp's really important these days.
It is only going to get more important.
Hmm. Now, quick question. What can hemp cure? Like, can it cure cancer? Can it cure, like, something like that?
No, hemp can't cure anything.
Oh,
That's a really bold statement, but it's definitely an additive, sorry. For instance, hemp bath bombs or hemp creams, stuff like that. It's helpful, but there's nothing that it can specifically cure. And even with, like I said, soil rejuvenation and phytoremediation and carbon capture, those are all steps. It's not a one time thing that it's going to fix. This needs to be going on and it needs to be on continuing.
uh-huh. Um, being in a new industry, what would you like to see change, and what do you like about it?
What I would like to see change, and I've said it a million times, would be the infrastructure. I would just like to see that get at least across the board, to some extent. And at the same token, I love that the industry is continuously growing. We're not set in stone in this, and we're all learning together. We're piquing interest. Case in point, your amazing podcast that's touching on
Mhm.
this. And I'm grateful. So I equally want the level-headed infrastructure, but I equally love the constant up climb of what we're doing and how to make it better.
Now, did your career ever get stopped from laws?
No.
That's cool, and that's also good. Um,
Yeah, we're very, very grateful for that. But I
yeah,
was also one of the second females in Canada to get my Health Canada license after we legalized. Thank you. I
that's
counted the days.
good job.
Thank you.
So you're in Canada,
Yeah.
and cannabis is legal there for like the 100th time. But now we are in America. We are not legal. What
Correct.
steps do you think America have to take to get where Canada is at? And are the laws strict?
Mhm. That is a loaded question. And that's a difficult question because like I said, you guys are state to state. Mm. Ooh, I don't even know if I can answer that question, to be totally honest, because again, it would depend because there are states that are legal and then there are some that are not. So
Yeah.
it's really difficult with how your government is positioning it to be able to say, oh, you should do this specifically. But I would say ooh, that you are stumping me today. No, but I'm loving it. I would say more of just let it be a conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, be open to the conversation. And then once everybody has hopefully made sense, then you start to talk about regulations and what that looks like in passing. And
Yeah.
I hope that kind of answered your question.
I mean, yeah, it did actually. That was a really good way to explain it since that question had like four different sentences. But when you were talking to people at an event, what is your favorite thing to talk about?
My dogs.
I would too.
Um, my favorite thing to talk about is what they're up to. I'm always really, really curious. Like, what brought you here? Why did you fall in love with this? Because you'd be surprised. You'd think, oh, it's because they're a farmer. You think it's something specific. And you would be really shocked at like, what a multitude of backgrounds people come from. And I love that.
What is the most asked question? And what's the most asked question that in just general of the hemp industry and what you get?
So most asked general question would be, can hemp get you high? And most asked question to me specifically would be, how old am I? And why, how did I get into the industry? Why did I switch careers rather?
Actually, yeah, why did you switch careers?
We already touched on that at the beginning, but
Oh.
it was, the thing is, I don't feel that I switched careers because it was a director of marketing position
Mhm.
and I organically fell in love with hemp. And then it was a slippery slope into falling in love with agriculture in general.
Yes. We're done? Um, so, um, how do people find out more and contact you about hemp and all that and about your company?
So we're on Facebook, Canna Collective Inc. We are revamping Instagram. So I'm really excited. I've hired a new person to the company who is incredible. So she's going to be going through and kind of revamping all of our social medias. We know that it is an important, part of having information available. But in the meantime, I am available at Canna Collective Inc. on Facebook or my personal Instagram, Danyka Dunseith.
So do you have any questions for me?
Connor, I have so many questions for you. First question, because I know that you've interviewed quite a few people and you have quite an exciting roster coming up. What prompted your interest in, wanting to discuss hemp and wanting to learn more about this as a kid?
Um, I don't know. I've always found it pretty interesting because I've been one of those kids that have grown up and found out that everything when I first do it, it's like eh. When I'm doing it, it's like, oh my God, this is fun. And when I'm learning about it, I'm like, who stopped me from doing this? And really, a lot of the times when I'm trying to learn stuff, I kind of stop myself because like I'm like, this is boring. To the time I do it, it's like, oh my God. Um, and it's just I don't really know what got me into it.
I love that attitude. That's such a cool attitude, especially that you can be, self-aware and know that, like, oh, turns out I do love this if I had to take it a second.
I also grew up in it, so that's half the reason why I love this.
Right. Oh, well, that makes sense too.
And you were a strong female I wanted to talk to, and being a hemp farmer is interesting.
It is interesting. It has its days. My
Mhm.
other question,
Yes.
what inspired you? Because I really do love that this is a huge mandate for your platform. What inspired you to focus on bullying?
So I am a bully. I am a victim of bullying, and I have a addictive mom, and it was hurting me a lot, and I wanted to hear other people's stories, and sometimes it feels better just to talk about it. And I want to just be a friend to people and make sure that people are safe and that they shouldn't be letting themselves down like that.
I love everything about that. Thank you so much for having me be a part of this.
You're
And
welcome.
I think it's really, like I said, I think it's really brave and I think it's extremely incredible what you're doing because it takes a lot of courage to stand up and talk about that. And I know that there are going to be kids or even definitely adults as well looking at this and saying, wow, look at this kiddo go. He's standing up and talking about what's right and what's kind. And you're definitely making a difference. And I think that's really cool. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. No one needs to be bullied, old or young.
No, bullying is bullying.
The school has been hard, and lots of kids feel alone. And a lot of the time, and almost every single time I see them alone, I go up to them and I say, hey, and then I start a conversation. And I've also seen people be alone and no one goes to help.
Yeah, that's sad. That's really beautiful that you do that and that you go up and And I really do love that you're doing that, because sometimes it's just as simple, hey, how are you? I like your shirt. Your shoes look cool, and you don't know what a difference that can make.
I feel bullies have a hard time in something else and really needs a friend, not a fight. The most important thing is you do not fight people.
I agree.
Hashtag be buddies, not bullies.
I love that.
So next week we have Liam, the taco show. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Make sure to give someone lots of hugs and loves today.